Okay, today's guest had a near-death experience after a motorbike accident. While he was in a coma for 3 weeks in 2015, he traveled to three places in another dimension, where his life made more sense and time didn't exist. On the outside, Steve was in a hospital bed, but on the inside, he was in a place he called the place between here and now. Let's welcome today's guest, Stephen Weber. Welcome, Stephen.
It's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yes, it's interesting. We just spoke a little bit before in terms of where we're located, and in terms of my particular interest in the subject of near-death experiences and how we come across these particular the people like yourself, but also the subject itself of how almost a dark night of the soul in different aspects from other people's lives create them to delve into this type of information and to expand, I guess, their level of consciousness and almost try to push aside the ego. Uh, and I think your experience might have lent itself to something to that extent as it does to other people. So maybe you could give the audience a little bit of a backtrack of what took place in your near-death experience in 2015.
Well, what was happening is that I was driving my Harley Davidson on Eastern Long Island. It was a Sunday afternoon, and I was coming back from a barbecue, a little hole in the wall barbecue joint that you really have to know where it is in order to go to it. And it's very popular just with the locals and such. And so on the way back, the road was backed up for miles and miles and miles. And I didn't know what was going on. I suspected perhaps it was emergency road work or an accident or something. And so after waiting in traffic for quite some time, I saw there was a right-hand turn up ahead, and I saw that people were going on the shoulder and making a right-hand turn. So I did just that. And just when I went into the intersection, a gentleman in a truck going in the opposite direction made a left-hand turn. And just as I was going into the intersection, and the fellow broadsided me. I didn't know what had happened. The lights had gone out. I was out. And then the next thing as I remember is I was laying on the concrete looking up, and it looked like a lot of time has passed because that it was starting to get dim out. When prior to this, it was a spring day, a cool spring day. And and then next things I know, I was flying through the air. I was going through the clouds and thinking, what one would think in that situation. And then the next things I know is I started to come down from the clouds. And then I saw a big H on the ground with a red circle in it. And I knew exactly where I was. I was in a helicopter. I was actually outside a helicopter on the landing pontoons or whatever they call it, kind of like you used to see in MASH. And I could see right down to the ground. I was being airlifted to Stony Brook Hospital. It's like one of the premier medical centers on anywhere. They've done tremendous research. It's a university hospital. I'm a graduate from Stony Brook University. My daughter's a graduate. My mom's a graduate. It's a pillar of our community. And I was just, that was the last thing I remember for a very, very long time. I was in critical condition in my hospital bed. I was there for almost a month, but in my body, in my soul, in my spirit, I was in another place, and I was spent, I don't know, eons there. It seemed like forever, but it was closer to forever than it is to one. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And it was a surreal experience. In fact, I didn't know anything was wrong. Everything seemed to be fine. In fact, my life was very deeply rooted in my regular life. Is that I'm an outlaw biker. I was, at least at the time, but I was also a computer guy, and I ran a computer business, a small business with my brother. And I was kind of like an old personality. I definitely was. But as a computer guy, it kind of got me certain privileges that perhaps people outside the industry didn't have. I was judged only by my performance, not by the way I looked or anything about me. And most people I dealt with thought it was kind of cool to like be with such an old personality who was also that computer guy. It was a lot of fun. But when I was in that place, is that I was dealing with one of my old customers who I hadn't seen in decades. And it was in a very real life situation in this other place. And as I dealt with him, I realized that he hadn't aged in 20 years. And I thought, wow, that is odd. Must be something in the genes. He was from Haiti and he talked like this Creole language. It was kind of French, kind of English, kind of Long Islandese, but I could understand it, with him, halfway talking, halfway miming out the words and giving expressions with his face. So I was able to communicate with him, and that was what was it. And then I saw him later on, and he looked like he had aged 50 years. And I thought to myself, wow, that must be his dad or something. But I talked to him for a little while, and I realized that it was actually my friend again. And I thought how odd that was. How did he age like 50 years? And I said to him, in the way that you communicate, is that I said, aren't you so and so? And he said, yeah, how'd you guess? And that went on time and time again, over and over again. This fella kept on appearing to me in different forms, different shapes and sizes, different ethnicities, different genders, different everything, different social structures, different every way. And at first I was able to guess who he was based upon his mannerisms or based upon something he would say. Like I had mentioned, he was a very animated guy. He had a very uniqueness about him in that way. But then after a period of time I began to rely less on those mannerisms, but more about, like, I could sense like no matter what form he changed into, there was something there that was always the same, and it was unique to him. And as time went on, I finally, no matter what shape or size he appeared to me, I was able to know it was him. And I was able to know it was him right away without even looking at him. And it was then I realized what I was being taught was how to see spirit in everybody and everything. It's not like there was the hand of God sitting there. Whoops. It was like the hand of God sitting there and turning the page in a book and saying, okay, this is chapter 1, start here, Steve. Is I was given these experiences, and as long as I was learning from the experience continued. And it was then I began to realize is that I was like sharing my knowledge, anything that I've learned, my experience, I was sharing it with the all that is. And I was receiving certain knowledge, certain information that was going to help me on my upcoming journey. I didn't even know that there was a journey coming, but there actually was. Because what I believe this place, I call it the place between here and there. And being raised a Catholic, is similar to the way that we learned at one time, like a middle ground between earth and spirit, where perhaps you weren't good enough to go into heaven and you had to do some penance here and learn some lessons. And so it was similar to that. I don't believe it's the place you go when you pass, but I do believe it's like an in-between place where you are transitioned from physical incarnation into spirit. Just as you transition from spirit into physical form, it really was that your body needs to prepare to pass into spirits. It's not a light switch. All of a sudden, you were one thing, the next thing you're something else, and a light switch has gone on, and you see yourself in your true way. No, it's more like, at least my experience was, it was more like a gradual understanding. The first things I was taught was how to see spirit in everybody and everything. And once I was able to sense it in my own friend, the way they taught me, and I use the term they very loosely, the way that they taught me was by seeing my friend in different shapes and forms. And then once I could sense spirit in him, now I was able to sense spirit in everybody and everything, the planets, the plants. And I began to realize that whether you believe in the Big Bang or let there be light, they both explain the very same thing, that perhaps we were all created from a singularity from a single point in space and time, and we expand it out into this universe. And whether you believe that you're all spirit or all stardust, both creation stories tell the same tale, where we now have this universe and there's life growing throughout the universe. No matter where you put a planet, if you give it the right circumstances, life will evolve on that planet. And the scientists say that's the reason, that's the proof of life. But I also say that's also the proof of spirit. No matter where you are in this universe, life will grow. And that's really the truth, is that I believe that from once I was able to understand and see and sense spirit and sense that in everything, I began to understand the very meaning of life and why we're here. That perhaps all of us, all of our consciousness, all the lessons that we learn and we perhaps give over to the all that is, or some people call it the Akashic record, that that you are learned. That is the actually all of us, perhaps in the universe, according to Steve, that all of us together make up the consciousness of the creator, that perhaps the creation and the creator are one. We are all stardust, we are all spirit, and collectively we make up that singularity, this everything. And as we learn and grow as people, the actual creator learns and grows from all of these experiences where galaxies are born, they collapse, they die. This is all the way that it works in order for us to improve our consciousness. And that was my very first experience in that place. And then once I stopped learning, that was what was it. I went on to my next experience.
Let me stop you there for 1 second, because in terms of your,
I could talk forever. So go
no,
ahead.
I don't mind. I just want you to
I'm from New York, remember?
Explain a few of the steps along the path. So you have this near-death experience, and now your body, your soul transcends to a place in the clouds or below or above. Okay.
Yeah, wherever.
You hear people who describe a different place in terms of when they have a near-death experience. Some go into a dark area where they see stars and planets. Some of people are pulled closer. Some people have a life review in terms of what they've done wrong or what they've done right, and living through the experiences of another person, viewing their situation from their perspective. So in essence, what I wanted to ask you was the interaction between a Haitian Creole gentleman, somewhat of a life review, that he was giving you a feedback through his interpretation and showing you different spirits in the forms of the masculine, the feminine, and different whatever it might have been, different soul energies, as you said. And also, was it a telepathic communication or was it verbal communication?
Okay, so let me
There's energy.
I'm very animated. I keep on knocking things
over. No, that's
over.
good. That's part of the show.
That's okay. What is Steve going to knock over next? I'll do the last question first. What was the last part of your question? You had mentioned, just remind me.
Yeah. The last part of the question is in terms of let's see what it is. You see, I just lost my train of thought. You're descending up. Is this? It was a telepathic. Was the communication telepathic?
Okay. So it wasn't like you ever see Star Trek and they communicate telepathically and the head, pulsates. It was nothing like that, and it was nothing like I said things in my mind and they read them and they were responding back with words back. It was like an awareness, is that I was aware that I wanted to know something, and then I would receive that awareness from whoever.
Right.
Or I, more often than not, is that I received awareness back that enabled me to figure it out. That was really the key. So it wasn't like you communicated in words, and it wasn't like anything from Hollywood. It was just you wanted to know this, or you wanted to share this, and it just happened. Okay. So that was the first part as far as the communication goes. But in this part, when I was interacting with my Creole friend, the guy's a character. I really do enjoy it. He's from Jamaica, Queens, by the way. He was from Haiti originally, but he did his business in Jamaica, so he was a double character. But no, that wasn't part of the life review. it wasn't until the next part that I received the life review. It was almost like this part was necessary to teach me in order to see spirit in everybody and everything and understand that the creator and the creation are one, in order for me to do my life review and get the most out of my life review. Because once I could see spirit in everything and everybody and everything, now my life review changed. It changed because that now I was aware and I was seeing all these scenes from my life over again, and I was looking at them in a different way. First off, as I was looking at them with the experience of having lived them already and having lived life and being a much older person than I was at the time, because I've grown since then. So I've so often your impressions, in fact, the very formation of your ego is perhaps based upon past experiences, negative ones that you've reacted to, and that you have this ingrained in you. And you react very quickly to things without thinking about it. I believe perhaps it's a survival thing. And I think that when you do your life review, you review your life, but with your knowledge and wisdom of your current state. And so you get to redo those things. And so when doing my life review, not only did I have the experience of living it once before and having my life experience, but now my awareness is so much increased. And as I started to go through my life review, is that I could see spirit in everybody and everything now. So now what I thought was the situation, at least from my perspective, was not the situations from other people's perspective. Everybody has their own reason for being. And at times people's paths cross. And you may interact with that person for a moment or even for a lifetime. But these are the things that happen to you over your life. But everyone has a different reason for being in situations. And so when I started to review my life, I saw things not only through my eyes, but through everyone's eyes that I was interacting with. And of all of a sudden, everything started taking on new meanings for me. I understood why I was there, why they were there, why these things were happening. Everything was for a physical reason, but it was also for a spiritual reason. And the spiritual reason was the true reason why you're gaining these experiences. In fact, if it wasn't for my life experiences, I would have nothing to go over in the life review. I would have nothing.
Right.
You know, your life experiences are everything to you. So it may make sense for some people to go home on a mountain all day. And that may be their mission. But for most people, I don't believe that's their mission. I believe their mission is to laugh and to cry and to experience life and to get so many experiences, because those are the things which you are going to count on your life review. And those are the things that will bring you the most bliss in this place and any other place which comes afterwards.
Yeah.
And that is so true, because as I would go through my life review, I began to realize the most difficult things in my life, the most traumatic experiences I had, the most heartbreaking events that happened to me were the events that brought me the most bliss, the most happiness in that other place. Because as I'd go through my life review, I would resolve each one of these issues that caused me all this grief, that caused me all the shame, all the hatred towards others, all the jealousy, all the animosity, all of that went poof, gone, as I work through all the circumstances and I understand why people did that, why they had that reaction, why I had that reaction. And you're really beginning to understand and put the pieces together. And when I finished my life review, my awareness was raised. And then I would go back again and I'd review my life over again. But I'd review it with my increased awareness. So I'd get more and more out of it each time. And so it went over and over again. I went my life review. As long as I continued to learn, I did my life review. Now, so many people say when they have these near-death or spiritual transformative experiences that they saw Jesus or they saw Buddha or they saw, beautiful flowers and beautiful skies. And that's what made the place beautiful. But for me, it wasn't like that. What made the place beautiful to me was this relief, this feeling that all my trials and tribulations are gone. I'm not angry with anybody. Nobody's angry with me. I'm enjoying things. It was just about my mental state. It wasn't about anything to do with my physical state around me.
Right.
And so that went on for quite some time. Is that good?
Yeah, where were you exactly? Were you standing? Were you
I'm not sure I understand.
My watch. Um,
where exactly were you? Were you in the company of somebody? Let me just clarify. I mean, for people
yeah,
who know,
yeah,
people know
yeah,
what a
yeah.
life review is and who've watched people who've had near-death experiences. But in terms of a life review is a way for a person to see as you said, the challenges and the things that people have gone through in their life
And
where they
resolve.
affected not only their own life but were impacted other people's lives. So here you are getting a life review. Are you seeing it pictures? Are you hearing things? Just describe what it looks like, what's going on.
Okay, so it wasn't like I was in any one place. I
Okay.
remember going to catechism, we used to call it. I guess it's like religious training. We were taught that God's eyes were everywhere. And I thought that was like, can you see me going to the bathroom? I thought it was like a physical thing. But when I was in that other place, it wasn't like that. It was like I was everywhere. Is that I was in people's heads. I was everywhere. I was the physical thing that was going on there. I don't know how to explain it, but
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I knew everything. It was like I was everywhere, but it wasn't like a sense of eyes. It was a knowingness, a understanding. It was like I was above the situation. I wasn't in the situation, but at times there were a couple of things that I haven't been able to resolve from my near death experience, and I keep on working through them in my mind, and I just haven't been able to resolve that. And this is one of those. This is one of those issues about sensing what was going on and my experiences there. It Yeah, I'm still trying to make sense of certain things.
Right, right.
And this is one of those things, is that am I really seeing them in the right way? Like, for instance, for instance, let me move away from this question for a moment, is that in the beginning of my near death experience, is that I it seems strange, but I dreamt that I was in outer space. I really did. And this is all before all of this happened. Is that I dreamt that I was in outer space and I was working on like some technical equipment, something that I was in a unique position to work on, and that people would bring me stuff, and uh, and it was like a weightless environment. Like, you can be weightless if you wanted to be, and uh, and and you could not be weightless if you didn't want to be. It's like people preferred to move around weightless, but when they sat, they kind of like wanted to be weighted. But the whole point of this is this went on for a while, and 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 then all of a sudden it stopped, and then all of a sudden all this other stuff started to happen. So it was almost like, it was kind of strange. Like, in my own mind, I kind of reasoned it out to be like I wasn't really dying yet. Like I really didn't begin the death process or something. So that was one thing I haven't been able to resolve. And then I've already forgotten our question that got me off on this tangent. I was talking about another issue that I couldn't
No, we were
resolve.
talking about what it was like in the life review, but I think you said a little bit of that. So
Yeah,
so
yeah.
so let's move on to, so you're 3 weeks in a coma, and 3 weeks on the earthly plane is time. 3 weeks is a time number, but in terms of being in the spirit world where you were, there was no time, correct?
It was different.
Okay.
So if you measure time in the way that we do it in the physical realm, yeah,
Right.
there was no time. But it was, time is measured in a different way. Like, here, you have time in the sense that you have appointments in the future. You make appointments. You have a calendar. Tomorrow is always coming. The sun rises, sun sets. You cook food. It starts out frozen, and next thing you know, you got a tasty dish. Things happen. There, things don't happen. The only way that things happen is through your personal growth. As you're going through, like as I described my Creole friend, um, is that there's no sense of time, but my journey of understanding, like I could see in the beginning how I first interacted with him. He was the way I remembered him. And then the next things I remember him was he was 50 years older, and I had to reason that out myself. And that process gives the appearance of time, because you could always look back to where you were, before you started this, and your understanding is where you are now. And that gave you a sense of time moving. It wasn't like the sun rose or set unless that was part of the experience. But time did not happen unless you were learning, unless something was happening. Time just didn't move. So if you're a person who needs a lot of time before you could really start reflecting upon your life, it may take you a while to resolve a lot of these things.
Yeah, absolutely. So that, there are other things that took place in your life in terms of emotional setbacks.
And
But as you mentioned, in terms of, or as I particularly, when speaking to people and through my own experience, you mentioned the soul, and in terms of having the experience on this plane with a physical body, and having the ability to have these experiences by interacting, using time as a reference point. Uh, you have this accident where you're in 3 weeks in a coma. You have this near death experience. You go off into the spirit world. You expand your consciousness. Your ego is surrendered to some extent. And now when you return, you have a specific tragedy in the family with your son. Maybe you could just speak about it. I guess your son's name was Nicholas.
yeah, Nick. Yeah, see what had happened is that after I'd gone through my let me tell a little bit about it. Do we have some time? Can I
Of
elaborate on
course,
something?
of course,
Okay.
sure.
So then after I had the near death experience, a couple of things that I learned that was really critical
Okay.
is that I learned that because some of the most devastating experiences in my life brought me the most amount of bliss, there is I learned not to have hate or animosity or jealousy or any of those feelings towards myself or anyone who brings me these bad experiences. Is that I don't allow them. That would be foolish. But when they happen, is I make the best of them. I don't dwell on things, and I try to see the wisdom in it. In fact, if I can't look back at myself 6 months ago and think what a jerk I really was not growing at all. Zero. And it was really true. And so once I stopped being in that place, that I've learned all what I was going to learn out of my life review, I went to yet a third place, and here I was taught how to how to here I was given a task. I had to teach young adults, young teenagers, young adults a task. And no matter what I tried to teach them, they wouldn't learn. They would act like they learned. They were great. They were great kids, and red team, blue team, whoever gets it wins, blah, blah, blah. I tried every way to motivate them. I couldn't motivate them. No matter what I did, I couldn't teach them this task. And then when I was at the end, I just had enough of it. I stood before who looked like the owner, whoever was running things, and I was just at my wit's end. And it was then I realized that perhaps I was standing in front of myself, not myself, Stevie Weber, but perhaps my higher self, that whole part of me that is always in spirit. And perhaps just part of you comes down to earth, or to have a physical incarnation, to make the mistakes that you couldn't make in spirit, and to learn from them when you here or when you are in spirit. And so once I began to understand that, and then I stood in my grace and I saw these kids in a different light, as I began to realize is that I wasn't there to teach them a task, that they were spirits who had yet to have a human incarnation.
Wow.
And I was there to shepherd them into their first human incarnation, and to teach them the tasks that they would need to learn in order to get the best out of this opportunity that they have. And it was then I began to really truly learn is that perhaps our spirit, although it was born with the universe, it evolves and grows over time through many different incarnations. Maybe as a plant or as an animal, you grow, you learn to love, you learn to sacrifice, you learn all these spiritual things as you're evolving in many forms. And when you have human form, now you're ready to take it to that next level of spiritual evolution. And when I was given this task for these kids, is that I didn't see them as spirits. I was giving all this training on seeing spirit in everyone and everything, and all this life training, going over my life review, and I'm so wise with all this spiritual wisdom. And the first opportunity I get to share it, to use it, all I saw was dopey kids. I really did. All I saw was dopey kids. And once I had this understanding, I was able to fulfill my task. And once that was complete, the very last place I was in, when I was in that place, is I would watch sunset every day with my two friends, Joey and Johnny. I lived on Long Island. It's a small little working class blue collar town called Kings Park. And at the end of every day, we go to the beach. It's a beach community. And there are these big cliffs, and you watch the sunset. You go down there with red Solo cups. Sometimes you drink coffee, other times you drink something other than coffee, and you talk about what's going on in town, like who's doing who and all the gossip. And so it's kind of small town stuff. So I would watch the sunset with my two friends, and this went on time and time again, like so many times. And then one day, as I realized something, I realized Joey and Johnny, and Joey and Johnny had been good friends of mine. John had diabetes, and he did the readings in church. And I was a Christmas and Easter Catholic. I wasn't really a Bible thumper, but the church was a big part of our community. And so I would so many things are on my mind today. I keep on going from one thing to another.
Go ahead, say it.
And John, when he was in church, when we would do the reading, he would have the voice of God, like he would say, and Jesus said, and the ground would shake. And he was just a character. He was an Irish guy, so he spoke with a little bit of brogue, and he could really tell a tale. And that was John. And he had diabetes, so he's suffering with blood issues in his leg and stuff. And then Joey had broke his back diving at the bluff, where we would watch the sunset when he was a kid, and he had implants in his back. And they were in their 70s, but they were great guys. They told a great tale. I really enjoyed their company, and they were much older than me, but I really enjoyed their company. And one day I realized that they had both passed earlier that year. And I thought to myself, wow, how could this be happening? Like, how could Joey and Johnny be here when they both had died? And so this went over in my head and time again, and I wanted to ask them why they were here. And for some reason, I didn't want to ask them. I don't know why.
So they sat with you in this place you're in.
Yeah.
At what age were they?
They were old men.
Okay.
Old men, the way I last remember them. And it overlooked the Long Island Sound, and we would watch the sunset. And I sat with them time and time again, watching this sunset every day. And one day I just had to know, is that I felt like if I didn't get a chance to ask them this time, I would never get a chance to ask them. And so finally I made it known that I wanted to know why they were here. And they told me that they were here to make sure that I was all right. And this was so strange because there was nothing wrong with me. I was fine. I didn't remember any accident. And it was just like something from a movie. It was like, all right, like echoed in my mind. And just then, as I watched the sunset, and as the sun set, it just got brighter and brighter. It didn't get darker. I shielded my eyes. And when I felt it was okay to open my eyes again, I opened my eyes and I was in my hospital room.
Wow.
And my mom was holding my hand, and she was telling me that I'd been in a terrible accident, but everything was going to be okay. And that was my trip there. But at first, as I wasn't okay. I mean, I was okay according to mom, but I couldn't walk. I was intubated. I was on a respirator. It was it was crazy, and I was so ill, but there was something in me that just kept me driving. And I was going through rehab. It took months of rehab, but I just kept on pushing. And it was then I realized what Joey and Johnny meant when they said that they were there to make sure that I was all right. They didn't mean there. They meant here.
Right.
Is that John had lost his leg. It was all infected, and that's what caused the loss of his life. My leg was all mangled. It was all disconnected, and it was so in danger, not only losing my leg, but losing my life from that.
Wow.
And then Joey, he had his back, all put back together from his diving accident. My back was pinned together with so many pins. I look like the $6 million man, Steve Austin. It's just like, and what better people to be my spirit guides, what better souls than people who had lived that experience. And it's not like I felt like it was one more push-up, like they were cheering me on. It was that I felt a surety of outcome. I felt like I had the wisdom that they had from their experience, from overcoming their injuries, that I felt like, excuse me, I was given a boost up, like they were my spirit guides. And that was a very, it really gave me a big kick, it really did. And life went on. It was going on pretty well there, and I was coming to terms with things. I didn't talk about the accident much. When I would talk to people, close friends, I would laugh. I would call it the universe according to Steve. I didn't believe it. I thought it was the drugs they gave me, and I didn't believe it. And then one day I went in my basement and I found my beautiful 19-year-old son dead from a drug overdose. And it wasn't so fun being an old personality now. And I was a dedicated father. I was a full-time dad. I was a member of the school board. I worked from home. It just happened so quickly. And it was devastating. I went over everything I've done in life and tried to figure out where did I go wrong. I mean, I was a super motivated dad. I did everything with my kids, everything. Almost to the point of they told me to leave them alone. I was in their hair all the time. I took them to everything. I was Mr. Dad. All my friends were moms. I really was. It was so much of my life, and it was a very difficult thing. And then one day, a friend of mine went to a medium and for a reading, and she asked if the medium had asked my cousin if they wanted Nick to come through, my son, who had mentioned his name. And she said, yeah. And she said that Nick had a sense of synchronicity with Saint Teresa. It's a Catholic saint, the little flower. And that he was sending me flowers. And did I receive those flowers? And I've been seeing roses all like a month. Like I would hike in the trails, and I would hike with my friend Kathy, a dear friend of mine, who also was my co-author in this book, The Place Between Here and There. It's available on Amazon. And I would go on walks with her, and I had been seeing roses all over the place, and I had written them off. Like people throw flowers, they go and take pictures out in the woods. And she was saying like in February and January and stuff, and I just wrote it all off. It was all a bunch of nonsense to me. And I told her the psychic probably looked it up on Facebook and stuff. And the psychic, the medium told us other stuff that was uncannily accurate. But I just waved it all off, being that the way information is today. And then she also said that so she gave us a couple other things, and that was it. And on the 1-year anniversary of my son's death, she gave us this medium gave us a card to place at a little memorial that we had set up in the woods for my son. It was right next to a brook and stuff. And we put a pen there and we write prayers, and people would come by, they'd write their own prayers on it and such. And so we went to lay the card down there, and I read on the back of the card, is I read that my son's birthday is the same birthday as Saint Teresa had. And so I thought, wow, but isn't coincidences. But then I saw underneath it, it said that my son passed on the same day that Saint Teresa was canonized. That was when the Catholic Church makes someone a saint, recognizes them as what. And I thought, wow, that was so freaky. That was so freaky. And then that night when I went home, it's like I had a dream that my son was okay, that he was in the place between here and there, that he was experiencing all the bliss. I really experienced a lot of bliss there. It really was a wonderful place. It really was. Although the end was kind of crazy, but up until that point, it was just a wonderful place. And I knew of the afterlife. I knew of, well, not even to say the afterlife, the continuation of consciousness and the way that life evolves and spirit evolves. And that he may not be returning to physical form now. I mean, he's not, but perhaps sometime in the future, our higher selves will meet. And because I really do believe that that there's part of you that always is in spirit, and just part of you experiences physical life to make those mistakes, and we'll meet again. I'm certain we'll meet again. And I'm not saying it was a light switch, but it was the first catalyst that helped me to let go of that grief and to really understand that there are so many, that life is good and people are good, even when very sad things happen. And you can live your life however you like, but if you can find out that is really the truth, and you can make those words your own words, you'll find peace in this world and any other world that comes afterwards. And that's what I really learned from that experience, is that truly life is eternal, and that we live for many experiences, and our experiences are everything. Every person you meet, every person, whether friend or foe, you'll come across them again, but not them in their form now, but in their higher self, in the way that we're all connected. And believe it or not, I thought that was the end of the story. I really did. Is I thought that I'd come to terms with things, and I really did. I got a very good friend in Kathy, and she's been, counselor, halfway between Sergeant Slaughter and Mother Teresa. She could be very direct at times, but very kind and comforting at times. It's very good to have a kind lady in your life. Friendship is everything. It really is, and family and those things are everything. But I thought that was the end of it. But then I came to this realization: something very odd happened. Is that I got a call from the police, and they said that they caught the guy who sold my son the drugs. And it just so happened as my neighbor had video cameras on my house, and the guy actually delivered the drugs to the house. And we had the guy handing the drugs to my son on videotape. And they arrested him. And my son, he was an athlete. He was Division I wrestler, New York State champion, 195 pounds. He was a beast. And he was also a musician. He played the guitar, saxophone, the piano. He was just great at so many things. It was certainly a shock. But it just goes to show you is that life is eternal. And there's so many things to learn, so many things to grow from, and that when they caught the fellow, there's no other drugs in my son's system. So they had a great case against this guy. My son had no drugs in his system, and they have the guy delivering the drugs, and my son took the drugs and died as a result. So they charged the kid with second-degree murder, and they put him on trial federally for it. And see, what was odd about that is something happened to me about 5 or 10 years before my accident is actually I saw another accident on the Meadowbrook Parkway where a gentleman was driving the wrong way on the Meadowbrook Parkway, ran into a limousine and killed a little girl and killed the limo driver. And I witnessed this. And they put that guy on trial for murder, first homicide for second degree, I believe at the time in New York State. And it was on TV, it was on Oprah, it was a very big case at the time. And I testified in that trial for 2 days. It was really a difficult thing for me, but I bared honest truth to the best as I could. And I felt very mixed feelings about it because that I was no saint and that he was just a kid. But I saw the grief of the parents of suffering that loss of their own child, and they were gravely injured. And they were very bitter, but I understood that. And but it was those two things. The kid made this terrible mistake that he couldn't undo, but I saw he wasn't a bad kid. He was just a foolish, dopey kid. And then I saw the heartbreak of those parents, and they sentenced this guy, I think, to about 16 years in prison. And but the parents were still very angry. They're still very angry that there was no way restitution could be made in their mind, and obviously. But then when I was placed in that same situation, that they had got this guy who sold my son the drugs, I was ready. I was going to that trial. Had a whole big old dose of hatred in my heart. I wanted that guy, terrible things to happen to him. But when I saw him in court, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it because I saw that kid. He was just a drug addicted kid. He was a stupid drug addicted kid, just like that kid in the beginning. The kid who got that terrible accident with the limo. And I felt love for the guy. I did. And not that I'm such a good, virtuous person, because I'm not. I'm an outlaw biker. I'm a rogue. I'm a pleasure maximizing person. But when I saw that, I can't help but think that experience was part of my life review. That whole part of that accident and that little girl getting killed, and that I had resolved that. Excuse me. That I had resolved that in my own mind. And so when I was put in that same situation, I was able to see it for what it really was. It wasn't in my own mind. It wasn't this dastardly, terrible thing. It was just a stupid, drug addicted kid that made this awful mistake, and he's entitled to forgiveness. I'm not running society. Society has to do their own things. If this was the United States of Steve Weber, this place would be a wreck, even more than it is now. But having said that, that's why I think this experience was so important to me, is that I never felt when I was in that other place that there was a hand guiding things. I felt like things happened. I felt like your life, like the stage was set and you had free will to decide these things. But God, it just seems so strange. I had this surreal experience with this crazy limo accident. And then I had my own near-death experience where I learned so many beautiful things. And then I lost my son underneath these heartbreaking circumstances. And then they catch the guy. And then this whole thing comes together as one mosaic. And I think to myself, like, how did that happen by accident? I mean, was that all chance?
Right.
So these are some of the things when I was telling you in the beginning, when we were sharing, I was saying like it's like some things I haven't been able to resolve. That's one thing I haven't been able to resolve. The beginning when I felt like I was in space, and then at the end, that the way that it seems like this was all planned. It seems like it fits together too well. Like, how did all this happen? And that's my story.
Yeah, it's very interesting because so many of us go through life in a mindset of victimhood, where each circumstance that comes our way is something that keeps us from what we need to search or seek or resolve. And instead of taking or being courageous and taking that step forward and removing ourselves from the fear of failure. We victimize ourselves and say, it's this person, it's that person. And I think when people have the opportunity to really do something special and have a warm heart and their soul is deeply connected to the spirit world in some way, maybe they're not aware of it at some point in their life, then something happens to awaken them to that connection that they have. And in many cases, from my experience of interviewing people, a lot of people who have this disposition, who are maybe on the wrong path, need to be reshifted to the right path. And when they're shifted back to the right path, sometimes it comes in the form of, like yourself and others, NDEs or out of body experiences. And what the inspiring thing from your story is your heart and your soul and your ability to, I guess, the spirit world knows that you'd be able to handle this and have this mindset. And so it's a lesson of love and an inspiration for others to be able to say, how is that possible? How could this person do that? But yet see the inner strength from it. Yeah. So for me, it's so inspiring to see that. How did you assimilate all these experiences? Like, how did you share this with people? Like, in other words, your near-death experience. Who was the first person that you were able to tell this to that you thought would like be able to believe you or understand you?
Well, I was sharing it with my friend Kathy, who I was walking with, and I affectionately call her Saint Kathy because she's a very spiritual person, and she's like very goody two shoes, you know. I'm kind of like dastardly biker, and she's like Molly Ringwald, you know. She's has that kind of look about her, and I just I would share it with her. At first, I would tell her I would share something that had happened, and then I would laugh about it afterwards, and she wouldn't laugh. And then finally, she said to me, "Steve, you notice I'm not laughing?" And I said, "Yeah." And she says, "Because you have to think about it a little bit more. Is that perhaps these things weren't your imaginations? It wasn't the drugs. Perhaps you were being sent a message, and that you yourself were in a position to receive that message. You don't think you were in a position to receive that message, but obviously spirit did think you were ready."
Yeah.
And I still don't think I was ready, but somehow I've been able to make sense of these things, and I think that so much having to do with the ego and learning truly what an ego is, at least in my mind. You call it whatever you want, but learning to get excited when you learn your faults, learning to get excited when you've made a mistake. That is so important because that's part of the learning is that you're saying of victims is that they either had ill will on them or they caused all ill will, and they carry this around like a bag of weights with them throughout their lives, as opposed to opening up their bag, taking a look at it, understanding it, and tossing it away. And that really is victimhood is chains. It truly is. It's like the Christmas carol, carrying around all these chains of all these problems you had. It's truly victimhood is terrible. And those people who portray it, anyone can be a victim. I talk to people who've had charmed lives who really, when I talk to some people, they have had charmed lives. We talk to them and they think they've had such traumatic lives. It's all the way you think of it. Your prison bars are so often of your own construction. It's how you put the pieces together in your own mind. With the same sets you paint, you could paint a beautiful picture or a terrible picture. Now, I'm not saying be a Pollyanna and ignore warning signs and such, but when you receive them, act mindfully, act spiritually, and act wholesomely. Act for yourself. Act to learn and grow, because that will bring you bliss in this world and any other world that comes after it. Don't
Right.
be a victim.
In your experience of losing your son and having this near death experience, obviously the anger and the hostility reached a point of, as you said, almost reaction, but yet you, through your experience, felt the love that the universe had taught you. What's the self-talk like when there's moments, for example, where the ego part of ourselves in yourself does reflect back on a moment of hostility or anger, and then what's the self-talk that comes back that contradicts it, that creates a sense of neutrality for yourself, or a sense of peace?
Well, first off, if you talk to people close to me, they'll tell you Steve's full of shit. So let's put that aside for a second.
All right.
I would say that once I find myself acting like that, it's almost like a reflex. It's like, no, it's almost like I used to smoke cigarettes when I was a kid. I quit when I was like 21 years old. But I would think to myself, I'd get in my car and I'd reach for a cigarette just because that was normal. And when I quit, I would still do that, but I'd have a reaction like, no, no. And that's the way it is once I find myself reacting that way, is that I like, no, it's like such a fear, because I don't want to go back to that way of thinking, because I like the way I feel now. I have good days and I have bad days, but generally speaking, the trajectory is up, and I look at things in a different way. I'll give you a perfect, for instance. I live in this paradise of community that has hundreds of miles of paved hiking trails, which I love. I have an electric scooter. I don't drive a Harley anymore. I could really hurt myself, but I have an electric scooter, which I love. I have several of them, of electric bicycles. I ride all up and down all these paths, and I hike and I run. I've really come a long way in my recovery. And so, but every day I'd pass this lady, and I would say hello to them. And everyone's very friendly. Everyone says hello, but she would just scowl back at me every time. And then one day I started to really go out of my way to say hello to her, because I found that I felt she was incredibly rude, scowling back at me, not even acknowledging me saying hello. When everybody says it's not like New York. People aren't trying to rob you or something, or trying to set you up for a scam. But like when I first got here, anyone talked to me, I was like, where's this going? Come on, where we go on? But here people just want to talk to you, and I just found that lost my train of thought again.
Yeah, the woman, the woman who was making that face.
Oh yeah. And so, but and so I was going to make fun of her, like really jump out and say hello to her, like really bring it to an issue. But then all of a sudden, that other part of me kicked in right away. He said, "Whoa, Steve, this is old thinking, man. Stop."
Right.
It's like, this person has obviously been hurt in some way. You could see that. You could sense her spirit. She's wounded in some way. And for some reason, maybe it's you, maybe it's everybody. This lady needs compassion. She needs understanding, and she needs her space. If she doesn't want to say hello to you for whatever reason, honor that and be ready. Should the day come that she says hello, and it's not like a guy-girl thing in the sense, like, I'm not a, it was on that level. So that's the way it reacts. It's like a stop sign, but it's so quick and it's so intuitive, and it's not like, oh well, I really should do that. It's like, I don't want to think like that again. No way. It's like a panic reaction.
Yes.
And that's why I say that. But if you ask my friends, they'll say, oh yeah, Steve's a nice guy, but he could be a scutch sometimes too. So it doesn't work all the time.
Right. Tell us a little bit about your book.
Yeah, the book, let me see if I can pick it up off the ground. I knocked it over a few times.
Maybe it'll float up.
Yeah. Woo. No, this is the name of the book. It's called The Place Between Here and There. It's on Amazon. It's in book form, paperback, as well as Kindle form, and it's also in Spanish. And so it's a beautiful story. When you read this book, there are heartbreaking parts of it, but the happiness ending is happy. It's a book of love and of light and of also understanding. It really go into a lot of details, a lot more details about the experience in the book. And it really is a great read. It's kind of a love story too. It's a lot of wonderful things. But the part that I shared about the beginning trial and then the end trial, that is not in the book. And I'm going to be writing another book soon to include that as well. But also our my email address is steve@betweenhereandthere.org, and I'm sure you'll have an info in the description as well. But I try to answer all questions we receive, but one of my favorite things now, what I really enjoy, is I teach it started off as a meditation class of a half hour long. Now it's a 2 hour long. I don't know what you call. I guess you call it kind of a yoga class, but I call it Kundalini Kriya. But it's basically it's this wonderful yoga class where we talk about spiritual things. We practice yoga, Kundalini yoga. We chant and meditate. We play music. We laugh and joke. It is a very cleansing experience, and I do with a friend of mine, Lou. She's from New Jersey. Yeah, she's from New Jersey, and she still talks like New Jersey too, with the slight Colombian accent.
Oh, that's funny.
And that's a lot of fun because that's the path that brought me to this spiritual understanding. It's like having had these experiences enabled me to have an understanding that turned me into a spiritualist. I went from pleasure maximizing outlaw biker to spiritualist. I mean, it's kind of strange, but I look back at those times with a smile, and kind of like part of me still wants to go back there. But really, I really enjoy my life now because this understanding has brought me a lot of relief in life.
Yeah.
And it truly has.
It's interesting because when I do Akashic record readings for people, most of the people are in professions, so to speak, that are not soul professions or their soul's purpose. So we wind up doing things that satisfy the ego or give us the pleasure as you speak about, but yet not giving us the soul, that soul work which enhances ourselves and others around us. So you're you're definitely an inspiration in terms of your experiences, your ability to deal with the ego part of yourself, the part that you know gives you that adrenaline rush, as well as the part that puts us in a place of personal growth, which sometimes makes people uncomfortable around us who've not ventured off into that path, and they don't know the authenticity of that path, and it's difficult to express it if someone hasn't brought light into that area of themselves. But you have, from my perspective, I know that I see that, and I understand your story from my own personal journey and others I interview. So thank you for the inspiration. If you could leave us with a message.
I'd like to leave you with the message, but I'd like to do like a little story before the message. It's really important.
Go ahead.
Is that one thing that we had covered on is that your experiences are everything. You learn, you grow from your experiences, and everybody is worthy. Everyone is a messenger. Everyone's a teacher and it's a student. And sometimes your own vision of yourself prevents you from sharing what you have to share with the world. You think to yourself, oh, who am I to talk? Like, it's having this experience. Part of it is that I often talk to people who are spiritualists who studied this stuff all their life. I haven't studied anything. I started Harley Davidson engines. And all of a sudden I'm talking to these people. I'm sharing my experience, much more educated than me, and at least about this anyway. And I feel like I took a shortcut, a spiritual shortcut, and some way that I'm not worthy to be able to share this message to people. And who am I? Who am I? I'm nobody. Who am I to share this message? And what really was the kicker that helped me to understanding was experience I had many years ago. I was coming back from Florida. I had been visiting my mother, and she lives in this little village called the Villages, and they had like dollar beers, and so I'd make my money's worth there. And so one time I was on the way back from visiting mom, and it was cold in New York. It's been like 90 degrees in Florida, so I was so dehydrated. I just wanted to fly back on this flight. I didn't want any problems. The flight was delayed many times because of the weather and stuff. I thought it was going to be canceled. I fly into MacArthur on Long Island, and sometimes if you're flying too late, the flights are canceled. They don't allow flights to land at certain times. So I just wanted to get on the plane. So finally I get on the plane. There isn't an empty seat on the house. Babies are crying. People are cranky. It is awful. And all I want to do is sit down, put on my things, and just drift into sleep. And so I get to my assigned seat, and there's this Hispanic lady there, and she's clutching a rosary, and she's praying in Spanish, and she's shaking. And no way No way. I do not want this now. It's not that I wasn't a compassionate person. It's just that I was done. I just want to go home. I looked all around. I couldn't find another seat. I was like, damn. So I said, all right, I'll make the best of it. So I sit down next to this lady. It's just the two of us, and she's doing this. And then all of a sudden, you hear the cargo door slam shut, and she yells, puts out a yelp, and she starts crying. And I thought, wow, if this gets any worse, the security people are going to come on. They're going to stop the plane. They're going to ground us. We're going to be stuck here. And so I said, I didn't know what to do. And so instinctively, I just reached over and I held her hands. And she looked at me, kind of startled, kind of shocked. And I didn't know what to say. I had to think of something. So I said to her, I said, Jesus sent me. If a bolt of lightning came down that moment and struck me dead, I would not be surprised, because I was, at best, Christmas and Easter Catholic. But it seemed to calm her down. And so she started to breathe, and I thought it was going to be okay. And then all of a sudden, the plane starts moving, and then she starts crying hysterically all over again. And I didn't know what to do. Like, I owned this. I was holding this lady's hand. There's no way I could like walk away from this. I had to do something quickly. And so I said to her, do you have any grandchildren? Oh my God, did she have grandchildren? She went on for 2.5 hours, how she's flying back to New York to see Maria and Georgie. They're getting married. Georgie's real name isn't Georgie. It's really Jorge, but he uses Georgie. Maria makes more money than George. She doesn't understand why that's so. Times are different now. She came to this country, and she went on and on and on. And she basically came to this country in a raft in the 1970s, and like started in a restaurant cleaning tables, and like made a life for herself and her family. And she had so many things to be bitter about in life, like coming with nothing but the clothes on her back and making a life for herself and her daughters and finding a husband and doing all these wonderful things. And she was so happy about life and about things where so many other people would have been would have been soured on it. They would have been victims. And now she was going to see her grandchildren on their wedding day. And she said to me, and she didn't come up for air once the whole time. And I got to have a love for this lady, really a true love for this lady. And I felt terrible. I felt terrible about the Jesus thing, because obviously she was a devout person, and I just wanted her to shut up. And I felt like I didn't have any compassion for her. I just wanted to rest. I was tired.
Yeah.
And so we go to get off the plane, and she couldn't reach the overhead luggage. Of course, I had to get it down for her. And so I'm carrying it off the plane. And you know how when you come into, I think it was JFK, how at one time there's a separate area. They were kept back, and you come in, and I see her whole family, the whole gaggle of people that Maria and Georgie got that, grandma, blah, 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 blah. And so I said, I got to say goodbye now. And she said, no, I want you to meet my family. I said, no, I got to say goodbye now. I said, no, you have to see your family. And I paused, and I said, I have something I have to tell you. And she looked at me, and she like went like this. She says, what's wrong? And I said, I lied. I said, the Jesus thing. I said, I deceived you. I said, Jesus didn't send me. I just wanted you to shut up. And all of a sudden she looked at me, and she let out a big belly laugh, and she clasped her hands, and she reached up and she pulled me down, and she kissed me on my forehead. And she said, the only one you deceived was yourself. And I said, no, I said, I'm not even religious. I had a hangover. I just want you to shut up. And she said, no. She said, the only one you deceived was yourself. Because sometimes the Lord chooses the most unlikely of servants. And once again, the Lord has chosen wisely. And I certainly didn't think so at the time.
Wow.
And perhaps I don't think so now, because in my mind, it was for different reasons that I did what I did. But it just causes me to think that, no, I was chosen for that, just like everyone else is chosen for all the good deeds and all the good differences you can make in your life. So when called upon, know you're being called upon and rise to that occasion because you're up to the challenge. And that would be my message to you. Seek the spirit, it'll communicate to you. Stand up to the challenge to bring love and light to yourself and people around you.
God bless you. That's excellent. Excellent words. Yeah, it's very inspiring to hear your message, but more so your authenticity, which I admire, and your ability to express yourself, you know, each aspect of ourselves, the light and the dark, and bring that forward. And that's important, because as you speak about the ego, the only way for us to really break the ego down is to expose the dark side of ourselves and be in touch with it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the light.
the light.
Chase away the dark. Put some light on it.
Yeah, so you've definitely shown the light today for me, and I'm inspired by you. So I want to thank you for joining me, Steve.
Thank you. It's been my honor. You know, I live in Florida now, but I you know, I love it here. It's paradise, but I miss back home, and just talking to you just brings warmth to my heart.
I'll come visit.